For Wednesday, the 27th of September. I'm Stephen Ridgway. Canadian airline Flair inadvertently left their user data accessible to all for over 7 months. So Flair is an airline. I believe it's one of the cut price airlines in Canada, and therefore relatively popular. Leaving databases accessible is hardly a new thing. We talk about this; it's come up quite regularly. You don't have to go to a great deal of trouble to hack something if the owners of the data leave the data lying around. So, okay. But what's interesting with this one is that the databases themselves weren't the initial vector of attack. What actually happened was that the .env files for the website were had incorrect permissions on them. They were incorrectly protected. Now, to put this back in context again for those that are not, if you're a web dev, you know this stuff already, and you'll probably tell me I have a very simplistic view of it. But basically, environment files commonly used to manage environment-specific settings and can hold sensitive information such as API keys and database credentials and so on and so forth. So, basic secure development processes would include checking that crucial .env files are secure. In this case, they weren't. And the .env files, contained MySQL database credentials and the locations for the local database, as well as remote internet connected databases, SMTP configurations, including credentials and tokens for a couple of the key email accounts used by Flair, and also the Laravel app key, Laravel being the PHP web framework. Okay. Armed with that information, it was relatively trivial to extract the first and last names, emails, phone numbers, flight details, other information about customers of the passengers of the airline. So potentially even some passwords may have been leaked as part of this. It's very difficult retrospectively to see what's happened here, apparently, which I think indicates, it's a good reminder to make sure that you are keeping access logs to your databases, even if it's nigh on impossible to write good use cases that will trigger. At least being able to go back and see what's gone on is good. So, ingesting log on, log off type activities, and maybe access of particular tables, particular fields. Don't know what, but have a think about it, and do what's relevant for your organisation. But make sure you've got this stuff in your SIEM, and make sure you've got visibility, or at very least, make sure somebody is checking the database logs for unexpected connections. Also, being able to identify those things as unexpected is important, and that comes down to the architecture of the design and architecture of the systems, so that it is clear who should be and shouldn't be accessing what data, and you're able to identify that stuff when it's going wrong. So there we are. Moral of the story is it isn't always the stuff that you think you need to protect that is, the actual data itself that is the issue. It's sometimes that the other components which contain useful information to attackers also need to be very well protected. So that is that. Oh, I suppose, by the way, if you have used the Canadian airline Flair in the last year or so, change your password. So there's a new malware strain which is being referred to as ZenRat. It's emerged concealed within a counterfeit Bitwarden installation package. The malware was discovered by Proofpoint. Well done to them. It's targeting Windows, and it looks like it is primarily focused on information theft. So ZenRat initially appeared on a website which very closely resembles the legitimate Bitwarden site. And the site offers you a download of Bitwarden for Windows, and then redirects non-Windows users to a cloned opensource.com article. So focused very firmly on Windows users, focused on people who are either deliberately trying to find a counterfeit, free, whatever version of Bitwarden, or potentially people who've just been conned into going there thinking it was the real site. So keep an eye out for that. I am assuming that there will be more in the way of indicators of compromise that will be coming out fairly soon from that. So keep your eyes open for those, and make sure that you are updating any intrusion detection software that you may have, network or endpoint, to trigger on this stuff. And also, if it becomes clear what the C2 servers are, try and get your network traffic into your security visibility tooling, and then trigger on potential connections to the C2 service. So there's a vulnerability in OpenFire, which is being exploited to deliver ransomware and encrypt servers. So OpenFire, for those that don't know, I have to admit I didn't, but there we go. It's a widely used Java open source chat server, XMPP server. It's had 9 million downloads, and it's extensively used for, as they say in the article, secure multi-platform chat communications. So the flaws being tracked as, or the vulnerabilities being tracked as CVE 2023-32315, and it impacts OpenFire's administrative console. It allows an unauthenticated attacker to create new admin accounts on vulnerable servers. So using those accounts, the attackers can install malicious Java plugins that execute commands via GET and POST HTTP requests. So the flaw impacts all versions of OpenFire from 3.10.0 up to 4.6.7. And from 4.7.0 to 4.7.4. So the vulnerabilities were actually identified earlier in the year, and a patch was released, I believe, in the spring. I think it might have been May. Yes, it was in May 2023. The fixed versions are 4.6.8, 4.7.5, and 4.8.0. However, according to VulnCheck, good website, by the way, for checking what's out there that's vulnerable on the internet. So VulnCheck reported in August that over 3,000 OpenFire servers were still running vulnerable versions. So moral of this story, patch if you can patch. If you can't patch, then don't have your stuff sat unpatched with vulnerabilities on the internet, or expect them to be compromised. So if you are using OpenFire and you're one of the 3,000, the owner of one of the 3,000 known vulnerable servers, I would say now is a very good time to get on top of that stuff. The information's out there. By the time it's hitting, the cyber news information about how to exploit this stuff will be readily available. It's a good article on Bleeping Computer, which we will link to the briefing so that you can read up on this one. And then finally from me today, just a quick reminder that there is an ongoing war in Ukraine, and Russia continues to use its considerable cyber might in support of its own forces. So APT29, which you might know of as Cozy Bear, are very active at the moment. The thing to bring to your attention is that their TTPs have been updated and are changing to meet the new objectives. So strongly recommend you do a little bit of research into what those TTPs are. MITRE ATT&CK framework is always a very good place to start for investigating what's already known about particular groups. They using things like HTTP smuggling. They're using droppers. They are properly good at what they're doing with this stuff. So, although a number of forensic artifacts have been identified via compromised networks, bear in mind that this stuff is, it is ever changing. Look out for, malicious PDFs and so on and so forth. Usual defenses will take you a long way, even to protecting you against APTs, unless the APT is very specifically targeting you, in which case you do need to think very specifically around. So something to bear in mind, though, is that even APTs are unlikely to waste a 0 day on any organisation if they can get what they need using already known tactics. So definitely making sure that, rather than trying to imagine all sorts of very complicated ways in which you might get compromised, and believe me, you won't get it right. I never have. I don't know anybody who has. At least not regularly. Make sure that you've got the alerting on the basics sorted, because that's an early warning that somebody's interested in you. So yeah, have a look. I would recommend you get updated TTPs, or at least understand what they are, around APT29 Cozy Bear. Very active at the moment, and I would say anywhere in the West which is seen to be supporting Ukraine in this war will be considered a legitimate target by this particular APT. So that's all from me for today. I hope you have a great Wednesday. All downhill from here to the weekend, hurrah. And I will speak to you all